Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So welcome everyone and namaste. This is of course our Wednesday evening class where we are reading and discussing Swami Ranganathananda's small book, 83 pages, titled Divine Grace, a lecture he gave in Perth, Australia to a Shivananda Ashrama group, 1978, Perth, Australia, Shivananda Ashrama. And the thing that is so absolutely remarkable is the Swami's memory, what he was able to remember and quote, including the passage that we're just about to read. If I'm correct, Swayam, we're starting over with St. Augustine's, or am I mistaken?
Yes, you are correct, Brother Shankara. That's what we plan to start.
Okay, very good. Before we go, is there anything from anyone that they would like to offer or any concern or question they would like to raise about what we've been reading? All right, dear, please proceed.
So the page number is 54, and I'll be starting from the last sentence of the top paragraph. Confessing to God and addressing Him, Augustine writes in a moving, poetic prose passage of his book, "And now, from my hidden depths, my searching thought had dragged up and set before the sight of my heart the whole mass of my misery. Then a huge storm rose up within me, bringing with it a huge downpour of tears. So that I might pour out all these tears and speak the words that came with them, I rose up from Alypius. Parenthesis, solitude seemed better for the business of weeping, close parenthesis, and went further away. I rose up from the Alypius and went further away, so that I might not be embarrassed even by his presence. This was how I felt, and he realized it. Brother Shankara, here the he is not capitalized, but is that still to God?
Alypius, yeah, Alypius.
Ah.
He's speaking about his friend Alypius that he was with.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't want to embarrass himself or Alypius by coming apart as he was about to do. He knew he was about to just fall completely apart. So he says this was how he felt. This was how I felt, and he realized it. The he is Alypius.
Okay. This was how I felt, and he realized it. No doubt I had said something or other, and he could feel the weight of my tears in the sound of my voice. And so I rose to my feet and he, in a state of utter amazement, remained in the place where we had been sitting. I flung myself down on the ground somehow under a fig tree and gave free rein to my tears. They streamed and flooded from my eyes, an acceptable sacrifice to thee. And I kept saying to you, not perhaps in these words, but with this sense, and thou, O Lord, how long, Lord, wilt thou be angry forever? Remember not our former iniquities. For I felt that it was these which were holding me fast. And in my misery, I would explain, how long this tomorrow and tomorrow? Why not now? Why not finish this very hour with my uncleanness? So I spoke, weeping in the bitter contrition of my heart.
Now, we can take him very seriously here. He really was feeling this penance, this contrition. So this is said to really win the heart and attention of the divine being. This kind of weeping and contrition. It's not that they expect it. It's not that they want it. It's simply that they love us and appreciate when we are in such misery and express it. They appreciate it and are responsive. This is what the mystics tell us.
Brother Shankara, so when he says this, and thou, O Lord, how long wilt thou be angry? Will thou be angry forever? Remember not our former iniquities. What exactly does that imply? Why
Well,
did
this
you
is
feel?
a one of the aspects of Catholicism that is not present in our Vedanta. That God is angry with us. Yes, Krishna does mention in the Gita that we are capable of outraging the Atman. But it's by our turning away from the Atman, not by our acts so much, but by closing our heart to the presence and the invitation of the Atman that is an outrage. And I have always wished that I had the wit when he was still alive to ask Swami Prabhavananda what he thought that meant. Because he would not have used that word in his translation, outrage, if it wasn't there. But Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother tell us without equivocation and without condition that we are forgiven from before the dawn of creation. And Saint Thomas Aquinas also makes this representation. He's considerably later, of course, than Augustine, and this early Catholic formulation of God's relationship with us didn't seem to reflect as much of God's new covenant as expressed by Jesus as it did that Old Testament God that still seemed to linger in the thoughts and considerations of the Catholics. But as we'll see, Augustine gets over it. Anything else, dear?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Anything from anyone else? All right, please read on.
Okay. So I spoke, weeping in the bitter contrition of my heart. Suddenly, a voice reached my ears from a nearby house. It is the voice of a boy or a girl, I don't know which. And in a kind of sing song, the words are constantly repeated. Take it and read it. Take it and read it. And at once my face changed, and I began to think carefully of whether the singing of words like these came into any kind of game which children play. And I could not remember that I had ever heard anything like it before. I checked the force of my tears and rose to my feet, being quite certain that I must interpret this as a divine command to me to open the book and read the first passage which I should come upon.
Now, some people would say this is magical thinking, that he was that he interpreted this voice that he heard from a child in a nearby house as a divine command. But he was looking for some response from the divine to what he had said. So among the mystics, this is not an unusual frame of mind for them to take when they utter something with such feeling and such uh, depth of contrition and such depth of being. They then look for some response, and it could come from anywhere. It could come from a bird. It could come from a squirrel. Uh, it could come from a rabbit, an ant. You know, this is the testimony of the saints uh, that is reflected in that book, Love Poems from God. That is the testimony of 12 realized souls. So here, St. Augustine hears it in the voice of a child, in this sing-song, take it and read, take it and read. So please read from again, he arose to his feet. Did you hear what I said?
You are
Yeah,
muted.
I did hear it, but I can't find that particular
Oh,
spot.
it's that one that says, the force
Oh,
of my
yes.
tears. I
Yeah.
checked the force of my tears and rose to my feet.
Yeah, I got it. I checked the I do have one more question, Brother Shankara, before
Yes,
I.
please, dear.
It's coming next, but the sing song voice said, "Take it and read it. Take it and read it." So, and then he says he interprets this as a command to open the book and read the first passage, which I
Yes.
should come upon. How did he make that connection to read the first passage?
Well, this is something, again, that people who are used to divination do. They simply open a book when they're looking for some guidance. They simply open a book and read the first passage that they come upon. This is a fairly common practice among those who do that sort of divination, and they're looking for. They've heard the command, take it and read it. Now they'll simply open the book and read the first thing that they come upon and take it as the follow-on command to the one that they just responded to. This is equivalent to taking your tarot deck. For those of you who know anything about tarot cards is another way of divination. Taking your tarot deck, shuffling them thoroughly, and then just pulling one card, and then seeing what what the instructions or information or a wisdom or advice is that that card provides. There are people who throw the I Ching, throw the coins, or use the arrow stocks and do the I Ching, and they are also looking for that that there is no such. The belief is there's no such thing as coincidence, and so anything that happens is because the omnipresence and omniscience and omnipotence of the divine. Anything that happens must be by the will of that being. So that's how these thoughts come to their mind. So please go ahead, dear.
Okay. I checked the force of my tears and rose to my feet, being quite certain that I must interpret this as a divine command to me to open the book and read the first passage which I should come upon. For I had heard this about Antony. He had happened to come in when the gospel was being read, and as though the words read were spoken directly to himself, and had received the admonition, "Go, sell all that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me." And by such an oracle, he had been immediately converted to you. So I went eagerly back to the place where Alypius was sitting, since it was there that I had left the book of Apostle when I rose to my feet. I snatched up the book, opened it, and read in silence the passage upon which my eyes first fell. Not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh in concupiscence. I don't know the meaning of that word.
Dissipation. It's all those things that were just mentioned, drunkenness,
Okay.
all that stuff,
Okay.
all that wantonness.
Okay.
It's that's the summary word for all that.
Okay.
Extreme dissipation. It's what the prodigal son did when he went and squandered his father's inheritance. He was he dissipated it. He was I'm not sure I'd say the word right. Never mind. We'll just go on ahead. But notice that he interpreted what he had heard and as an oracle. Oracle. This is the voice of the divine speaking through some other human being, an oracle.
I had no wish to read further. There was no need to, for immediately I had reached the end of the sentence, it was as though my heart was filled with the light of confidence, and all the shadows of my doubt were swept away.
So, would you read again what it is that he found when he opened the book and his eyes fell upon something so appropriate? Remember that Swami Ranganathananda included this because of his depth of belief and understanding in what St. Augustine is saying here. So please read the passage that he fell upon, that his eyes fell upon, and what he said, what he writes afterwards.
Not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh in concupiscence. I had no wish to read further. There was no need to, for immediately I had reached the end of the sentence. It was as though my heart was filled with a light of confidence, and all the shadows of my doubt were swept away.
Now let's again credit what he's saying as the truth. He had sought, he had gone and fell on the ground and wept bitter tears in true deep contrition. He had sought guidance and forgiveness. And here he has his instruction. And so he was filled with confidence, the light of confidence. Notice his use of the word light, the light of confidence. And that light of confidence drove all the shadows, the darkness of my doubt were swept away. These are the experiences that come to us when we practice spiritual disciplines for some time. Each of us, we won't have we won't have the same experience as Saint Augustine or any of the other the 12 saints that are in that book. Augustine is not among them, but we won't have the same. We will have something of our own, but it will answer in the same way that this answers. And this is why the Swami included it, to encourage us that if we take this attitude, if we make spiritual unfoldment our priority, that something like this will happen to us. You'll have this confidence. Well, this is, in Sanskrit, Shraddha, the full light of confidence and of freedom from doubt. And of course, doubt returns. So then you bring your Shraddha to the fore again. Anything else from anyone before we press on? Okay, go ahead, dear.
Before shutting the book, I put my finger or some other marker in the place and told Alypius what had happened. By now, my face was perfectly calm, and Alypius, in his turn, told me what had been going on in himself and which I knew nothing about. He asked to see the passage which I had read. I showed him, and he went on further than the part I had read. Nor did I know the words which followed. They were these: Him that is weak in faith, him that is weak in the faith, receive. He applied this to himself and told me so. He was strengthened by the admonition. Calmly and unhesitatingly, he joined me in a purpose and a resolution so good and so right for his character, which had always been very much better than mine. The next thing we do is go inside and tell my mother. How happy she is. We describe to her how it all took place, and there is no limit to her joy and triumph. Now she was praising you, who art able to do above that which we ask or think. For she saw that with regard to me, you had given her so much more than she used to ask for, when she wept so pitifully before you. For you converted me to you in such a way that I no longer sought a wife or any other worldly hope. I was now standing on that rule of faith, just as you had shown me to her in a vision so many years before. and you had changed her mourning into joy, a joy much richer than she had desired, and much dearer and purer than that which she looked for by having grandchildren of my flesh. So, what was it that his mother had, that vision?
Oh, he had the vision of his mother.
Oh,
He had a vision of his mother uh, and the depth of her yearning for him to be free of this dissipating life that he was living, this life of rioting and drunkenness and chambering and so on. Chambering means sleeping with people. Um, it's just a euphemism for uh, uh, that kind of sexual activity. So she had he'd had the vision of her and the depth of her yearning for him to be free of this life. And of course, in her, what she was at that time yearning for him to become was a good young man who sought a wife and husband, I mean, a wife and children, and she would then have grandchildren. This is what mothers do most often. But now he's saying she was so happy that for him and for herself that he had gone even beyond that. And that's why she said, and she looked uh, that is something much dearer and purer than that which she looked for by having grandchildren of my flesh. So, does all that make sense?
yes, it does.
Okay. Anything else from anyone while we're paused?
Brother Shankara, it seems like
Yes.
Saint Augustine had the there is a little similarity of Girish Chandra Ghosh, his life, and Saint Augustine, isn't it? They both had gone through some roller coaster rides in their life, experimenting a lot of different things which society doesn't accept. But then later on, they became the most wonderful people, inspiring people in the world.
They became saints, yes.
Exactly.
By the actions of the divine. And this is what all the saints tell us. It is not by my will that this has been done. It is by thy will. And so this is where it's so joyous to join them in that aspiration. As Vivekananda said, sainthood is inevitable for each of us. Now, that would just imagine that. Sainthood is inevitable for each of us. Doesn't matter. And this is why Sri Krishna says in the Gita, turn to me in utter devotion, which is what Augustine had just done with Christ. Turn to me in utter devotion. I see no sinner. Holiness itself shall transform you. Transform you into what? Transform you into a saint. Perhaps not overnight. That is something that happens to only someone like Scrooge. But and that is said by the Swamis. Even that is possible. But for most of us, it takes a lifetime. But there's no reason that it needs to take more than a lifetime if we practice our spiritual practices, if we do our spiritual practices regularly and diligently. Amazing things happen. We unfold in ways that we would never, ever have been able to predict.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
So, what exactly was it that made Augustine go to the church that day and cry like that? Was there any particular, or was he doing that on a regular
He had
basis?
he had come to the end of his tether. He knew he had this vision of his mother and her yearning for him, and he had come to the end of his tether. He had just tethered. He'd come to the end of his rope, so to speak. He just and he knew, and he had these other good friends like Alypius that were, as he said, of better character than his own. And he yearned to be free of this. This is what he says in the beginning. I prayed, free me of this. And so this is what happens. And, the Confessions of St. Augustine are really quite a read. I mean, this isn't all that he says. He talks about how this is now the beginning of the conversion to what becomes sainthood, though he doesn't call himself a saint. His sainthood was conferred on him, of course, by the church. But he talks about the rest of, and it's very instructive to anyone who is living a very worldly life. Of course, most of them won't read it, but it's very highly recommended within the Catholic Church. He was
Okay.
just yearning to be free, as we always are, yearning to be truly happy. And so, as he said here, just as he said here, his aspiration began to be something that was beyond even what his mother had prayed and wept for him to. And don't discount the power of her prayer and her tears either. And that's why he remembered it so in these moments. And let's recall again that this is included in this book on divine grace, because this is an example of divine grace. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear.
Then follows the spiritually significant account of his realization of God, not as a faraway extra-cosmic monotheistic deity which cannot be experienced but can only be believed in, but as the very soul of his soul, the life of his life. And what is this God? I asked
This is now again Augustine speaking. And what is this God?
I asked the earth, and it answered, I am not he, and all things that are on the earth confess the same. I asked the sea, and the deeps, and the creeping things with living souls, and they replied, We are not your God. Look above us. I asked the blowing breezes, and the universal air with all its inhabitants answered, Anaximenes was wrong. I am not God. I asked the heaven, the sun, the moon, the stars, and no, they said, We are not the God whom you are looking. And I said to all those things which stand above the gates of my senses, Tell me about my God, you who are not he. Tell me something about him. And they cried out in a loud voice, He made us. For truth says to me, Your God is not heaven or earth or any other body. And now, my soul, I say to you that you are my better part. You animate the whole bulk of the body, giving it life. a thing which nobody can do for another body. But God is for you too, the life of your life.
Now, this is qualified non-dualism. This is Augustine's and Catholicism, qualified non-dualism. What does that mean? I am a part of you. It's not the non-dual. There is nothing but you, was Saint Meister Eckhart put it this way. The eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me. The eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me. This is total non-dualism. But what this is now is the same thing that Hanuman said to Rama when Rama asked him, "How do you think of me?" He said, "Well, when I'm in my ordinary frame of consciousness, I see that you are the master and I am your servant. When I am in deep meditation, I understand that you are the whole and I am a part." And that's exactly what Augustine discovered here. So this is a very high form of Christianity. The non-dualism, the qualified non-dualism of which Christ speaks when he says, "I am the vine and you are the branches." Any comments or anything from your own wisdom or experience to offer in this regard? Or any concern or question?
I think I may have misread that one sentence. So I'll read it again. Instead of about, I substituted above. But
Yes.
now I understand. And I said to all those things which stand about the gates of my senses,
Uh-huh.
tell me about my God, you who are not He. Tell me something about Him. And they cried out in a loud voice, He made us. For truth says to me, your God is not heaven or earth or any other body. And now, my soul, I say to you that you are my better part. You animate the whole bulk of the body, giving it life, a thing which no body can do for another body. But your God is for you too, the life of your life.
So this is, notice the gesture toward human relationships. No body can do for another body. Only we, only each of us individually can realize our divinity. No one, well, an avatar can confer this knowledge on us, but no, they're not the body. They may appear in a human body, but it's not the body that is doing this. It is their great spiritual treasure that shows us this truth. But this is his gesture toward the life of the body, the life of the senses, is not where you will find this truth. It is within the soul. The life of your life, which are words that are repeated by, I am the life of your life, Christ said. I am the truth, the way, the life of your life. Vivekananda has a short guided meditation that takes us right to this point. It's quoted in a number of the talks that have been given over the years. Most recently, I don't remember. It was a karma yoga talk, I think. So in any event, this is a very familiar refrain among the saints. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear, we have plenty of time. Please read on.
Okay. So number 20. Sri Ramakrishna and the unity of God the personal and God the impersonal.
So this is not, notice, this follows directly on this realization of Augustine's, this unity of God the personal and God the impersonal, the thou of which we speak when we say not I but thou. Okay, so Sri Ramakrishna and the unity of God the personal and God the impersonal. Okay, please.
The most important reference to what bhakti religions call self-surrender and divine grace occurs in the Upanishads in the teaching of Yama to Nachiketa in the Katha Upanishad on the
Yama
subject.
is the god of death. Nachiketa has been sent to the god of death by his father. He's been put to death by his father for reprimanding his father for not offering real offerings in his sacrificial offerings. And so Nachiketa says, "To whom will you offer me?" And his father says, "To you I offer to death." And so now this is a conversation between the god of death, Yama, and Nachiketa. So with that, please start reading this again, dear, so that those who didn't know that now have a frame of reference for it.
The most important reference to what bhakti religions call self-surrender and divine grace occurs in the Upanishads in the teaching of Yama to Nachiketa in the Katha Upanishad on the subject of the realization of the Atman, the one infinite self of all. This Atman cannot be obtained by study of the scriptures, nor by a sharp intellect, nor by much hearing. By him is it attained, whom it chooses. To him this Atman reveals its own true form.
And what did Christ say, referring to Augustine and the Christian tradition? Ye have not chosen me, I have chosen you. This is the Atman speaking. Christ spoke as the Atman, the Saguna Atman, the Atman with attributes. So it's not by study of the scriptures, nor by a sharp intellect. No, you can't be smart enough to know this, nor by much hearing. You can hear and hear and hear. That is to say, read and read and read, listen and listen to lectures. It will not give you the knowledge of the Atman. It will give you a frame of reference for the knowledge of the Atman. But then what? By him is it attained whom it chooses. To him, this Atman reveals its own true form. Okay?
It is generally held that the varied processes mentioned in the verse, like the study of scriptures, theological
Ratiocinations.
ratiocinations,
It means a very sophisticated form of reasoning and thinking, using logic, ratiocination.
listening to divine recitals and discourses, and several other spiritual practices constitute man's spiritual journey leading to the realization of the Atman. But, says the Upanishad in this verse, these do not comprise the whole truth about the matter. These operate within the causality principle. These fall within the network of the cause and effect relation, the world of duality and relativity. But the Atman is beyond causality. It is not an object among objects, an item among the non-self items of the world, an observed sense datum among the observed sense data of the world, to be discovered by carefully worked out means. It is, on the contrary, the very self of the observer, of the seeker. As pure consciousness, infinite and non-dual, it is not the end product of the causal determination of means and ends. The unconditioned cannot be had through the conditioned, as the Mundaka Upanishad clearly expresses it. Commenting on this, Shankaracharya says, in this world, there is no entity which is not subject to cause. All the worlds, terrestrial or celestial, are the products of action, of forces, and because they are products of action, they are non-eternal. What I seek, however, as a spiritual seeker, is the eternal, the immortal.
Not see, but seek.
Seek, yes. What I seek, however, as a spiritual seeker, is the eternal, the immortal, the fearless, the changeless, the immovable, and the constant, and not what is contrary to these. Shankaracharya's interpretation of the above verse of the Katha Upanishad, though slightly different, still lays emphasis on the primacy of divine grace as self-revelation of the Atman, whom alone, that is, one's own self, this seeker seeks, longs for. By that self alone, by that seeker, one's own self is attained, is realized. I'll read that again with where it's capital and where it's small. Whom alone, that is, one's own self with a capital S, this seeker seeks, longs for, by that self, small s, by that self alone, by that seeker, one's own capital S self is attained, is realized.
So Shankaracharya does not put the emphasis on the Atman being the chooser. He says the self chooses the self. He just puts the emphasis, as Ranganathananda says, he puts it a little differently. Ranganathananda puts it more pointedly. The self chooses to reveal itself. The self, capital S, the Atman being the self. So, but it's not a matter of merit. It's not a matter of earning it. We're not likely to realize it unless we prepare ourselves. But this is why the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, as told in the Christmas Carol, is so important. The reason that Scrooge has the experiences he has in that one night, the reason that Scrooge has those is because of the love of a friend. Now, that love is not a limited human love. It is the eternal love of the self or the divine within Jacob Marley that brings him, that gives this individual, Jacob Marley, the boon of coming to Scrooge and offering him the experiences that Scrooge unwillingly and certainly not cooperatively experiences in that one night. He keeps saying, oh, find somebody else, I'm not worthy, blah, blah, blah. The same things that St. Augustine said in a way. But the divine being continues to invite him to understand by showing him the circumstances of his life, the spirit of Christmas past, the spirit of Christmas present, and the spirit of Christmas future, all happening in one night. They result in Scrooge's utter and complete transformation, not by Scrooge's will or wish, but by the divine having chosen through Jacob Marley to awaken him. Because he does have essentially a very profoundly good heart that is masked by his fears and doubts. So those of you who we're coming up on the Christmas season, those of you who haven't ever seen the film Scrooge, the 1951 black and white, the title is simply Scrooge, and it stars Alistair Sim, S-I-M. I highly recommend it for any spiritual seeker to take advantage of it. You can find it online. You may have to pay a few bucks if you have Amazon Prime, or you may find it on YouTube even for free. But watch it. And this is what is also being pointed to in St. Augustine, saying the prayers of his mother and the vision he had of her and the depth of her prayer and yearning was transformative for him. This was the great, this was a great motive force for him to give rise to his contrition and his desire to change. Any comments or questions from anyone? All right, would you please read Shankaracharya's, with all of that, will you now read what Shankaracharya said? And do give us which is the capital S self and the small s self as you read them.
Shankaracharya's interpretation of the above verse of the Katha Upanishad, though slightly different, still lays emphasis on the primacy of divine grace as capital S self-revelation of the Atman, whom alone, that is, one's own capital self, this seeker seeks, longs for, by that small self alone, by that seeker, one's own capital self is attained, is realized. Here, the choosing is done by the seeker by means of an earnest longing and struggle. This seeking and struggle on the part of man is essential, according to every spiritual teaching. But it is only to draw down the grace of the Atman through a small self-revelation, as we have seen earlier. Shankaracharya emphasizes that essential of divine grace in commenting on the first part of the verse. Shankaracharya emphasizes that Shankaracharya emphasizes that essential of divine grace in commenting on the first part of the verse. How is the Atman obtained? This is answered. To that lover of the Atman reveals, manifests its own real form, its own real nature. That is the meaning.
And this yearning, over and over and over, this is what is stressed by the great spiritual teachers. As Nisargadatta Maharaj, the great non-dual teacher, but has a very generous heart, as does Ramana Maharshi. But Nisargadatta says, everything yields to earnestness. That's his translation of his use of the term mumukshvatvam. Sri Ramakrishna translated it as yearning, and we hear that echoed here. It is this yearning that, as it was just said, draws down the grace of the divine, of the Atman. Any comments or questions about that? Because it's so, if we're going to go ahead, we have to have this clear, that this is not a matter of self-effort. It's and you can't make it happen. You can yearn for it to happen. And this yearning may turn to weeping. It may turn to earnest prayer. It does over and over again in the lives of the saints. But none of that makes it happen. It simply awakens that loving, that eternally loving, unconditional, unconditioned divine presence that then by its own volition reveals itself. Krishna talks about this in some detail in the Gita, in The Field and Its Knower, chapter 13. Anything else from anyone? Please, let's get this clear, because we're coming to the end of the hour and we don't want to. Anything else from anyone?
I think, like it says in the previous page, what we are doing now in terms of studying books like this, scriptures, discussing, listening, all that is steps that I don't know whether to call little self or big self is taking us on this journey until it kind of, when we are at that point of readiness, then it will reveal itself.
Yes, absolutely. But you'll notice that it is emphasized over and over that the most important thing that is happening here is this experience, whether we experience it consciously or not, the experience of the underlying unity of the divine presence in each of us that is here. We feel it from one another. If we sit quietly, we simply feel. This is why it doesn't matter whether someone says anything or not. That divine presence is part of this. There appear to be 7 individuals here, seven different screens. That is, of course, illusory, in that each of the individuals here will arise and pass away. But the self, the divine presence, that is also the underlying truth and the most important truth, that will not arise and pass away. That is unconditioned, eternal, changeless, and it is what is being felt. It is the real reason for us to gather for these things. Yes, we study. Yes, we encourage one another. Yes, we love one another in a temporal sense also. But it is that underlying unity that exists that is recognized by us that draws us together this way. And we are among the most fortunate human beings alive that we do these kinds of things. Not that I'm saying that the other people, there's anything bad or wrong with them. No, they just simply don't have this motivation just now. So it's that small s self that is reflected in these 7 screens is underlain, is undergirded by that largest self. That if we just sit quietly, we can feel it. It is so comforting. It is so much the truth of our being. Capital B as a verb, being, not as a noun. Any final thought from anyone else?
Brother Shankara, this is McKaylee. You said St. Augustine that it was his mother's prayers.
His mother's prayers had a great, by his own testimony, his mother's prayers had a great influence on him and also drew down the grace of the divine, which then was, and Swami Prabhupada, I cannot tell you how much emphasis he put on prayer. He when he was asked, does prayer really make a difference? He says, what, do you think you are separate? No, of course it makes a difference, because it is a reality that is being transferred. There is no such thing as time and space. This has been absolutely proven by the physicists, for that matter. So it is this, and he even emphasized a special kind of prayer, which is making japam, saying your mantra on the behalf of others. And I don't know whether St. Augustine's mother, I don't know whether the Our Fathers and Hail Marys had become part of the Catholic tradition by that time, but some sort of prayer, I'm sure, was something that they repeated, and no doubt she was. And remember, she was not in the beginning. She just wanted him to end this horrible life of dissipation, which was going to lead to his death. That's what happens with the dissipation that goes on unchecked. And she wanted him to become a good man, a husband and father. That's what she was praying for. But the divine, being drawn by her prayers, answered it at a much higher, as he said, above what she asked for. It was what was given to him because of his own yearning, also his own yearning to be free. This is our basic great yearning: the yearning to be free and to be happy.
Okay, thank you, Brother Shankara.
Is there any follow-on, Michaela?
Well, if I was just wondering, but you might not know if he knew of her prayers or if it's because there's no time and space, her just coming from the heart and the earnestness of her prayers that, it was received because she.
He mentions having that vision of her, Michaela.
Okay.
Go back and read those words if you have the book. He mentions that he had a vision of her in the depth of her prayer and her yearning on his behalf, perfectly selflessly. Yes, she wanted him to be a good man and a father and a husband and father and all that, but it wasn't just that she would have grandchildren. She wanted the best for him, and he had this vision of her in which he saw her in this light.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
It is beautiful. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, "Come to me, come to me," offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this your jungle world. Om Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Anything else from anyone? Any final thought? All right, dears. Well, the next opportunity for us to gather together will be, well, you could join us for Saturday morning's reading of the Chandi. There will be two readings that morning, one led by Rita Matthew, and that's done in Sanskrit and is accompanied with some puja and so on. It's a very nice gathering. That's from 11 to noon, 11 a.m. to noon this Saturday. But from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, those who decide to join us, which is usually just a couple of people, a couple of women, we recite those same Chandi hymns in English. Simply because those of us who don't know Sanskrit, we find the English is more meaningful to us. But those two things are available on Saturday morning. Then Saturday at noon, we will continue our study of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as translated and commented on by Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher. And he published that book as How to Know God. And we're making some progress in the second chapter, which is the practice of yoga. We've studied the first chapter, the aim of yoga, in great detail. And now we're on the second chapter, which is the practice of yoga. Patanjali wrote a wonderful workbook, and Swami Prabhavananda translated it very capably and published it in English for us to understand. And then on Sunday at 11 a.m., the talk is titled "The Witness Watcheth Disintegration." And as you'll see, there's a reason for this King James Bible version of the word watch, watcheth. It is a holy watching that is going on. It is a sacred watching. The witness watcheth disintegration. There is creation, there is sustentation, and destruction or disintegration, as Swami Vivekananda calls it. Anything else from anyone, dears?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Did Rita change the timings again? She had gone to doing it 9 o'clock Western time at some point, and she was doing it with, like a teaching thing? Or?
Dear heart, look on the website.
Okay.
I remember it as 11 a.m. our time to 11 a.m. to noon. That's how I recall it. But don't trust this old memory of mine. Check it out for yourself. And there's a Zoom link for you to join. That's how that works. And of course, it's a Zoom link to join us if you join us at 9:30 on that Saturday morning also. Those two links are both on the website, and they are there in your newsletter, and the time as given to Cindy by Rita is the one that's published in the newsletter and put on the website page. Thanks for asking so that we get that clear.
Yeah, I may be mistaken, but I'll go to the news.
Oh dear. It's so easy for us to be mistaken about these things. And 9 a.m. Western time would be noon our time. So it's, I don't know. In any event, here we are at the end of our class on a Wednesday evening. So may you be well and in bright spirits, dear, until the next time we see one another. Jai Shri Ramakrishna Jai Ma. So I'm going to sign us off. As soon as I can find the cursor, there we are. All right. Good night, everyone.